As you pointed out, over several years, we've found that Binance has been evading U.S. law, offering derivatives to U.S. customers and intentionally evading requirements to register with the CFTC as both a broker, as an exchange for both swaps, futures, and options. So this has been a long-going practice. It's a clear, intentional method to evade law, and because they're offering to U.S. customers, we felt like this was an important case to bring and sending a clear message across to crypto exchanges and crypto participants across the world.
The U.S. Department of Justice and the Securities and Exchange Commission are conducting an inquiry after hearing about a strange $400 million transfer from Binance to Merit Peak. The authorities are investigating the payments to see if any laws have been committed because it is thought that Binance and Binance US may have broken financial standards. The SEC and Justice Department's investigation into Binance US and Silvergate Bank for money laundering and sanctions violations, as well as the compliance requirements for cryptocurrency exchanges and corporate client funds, are discussed in this video. We'll also talk about Binance.
The CFTC has sued Binance, alleging that it allowed US customers to trade on its offshore exchange, also alleging that it encouraged US-based trading firms to use offshore shell companies to trade through Binance to try and get around some of those AML and KYC protocols and the regulations. And it's also alleged that their anti-money laundering programs and their Know Your Customer programs were completely ineffective.
If we could just talk about the significance of this particular CFTC lawsuit against Binance, can you just give us some color around that, considering it has repeatedly faced scrutiny from several regulatory agencies here?
Absolutely, and you're right. Binance has been under scrutiny from several agencies, from the IRS to the SEC and to the DOJ. This is sort of the first blow against Binance that we've seen from a regulatory or a law enforcement agency. This isn't about criminal enforcement. There are no criminal charges here, but the consequences could be pretty dire for Binance. The CFTC wants to ban the exchange from trading in derivatives.
What is the jurisdiction? What are the jurisdictional issues here? I mean, if people were acting in the U.S. through VPNs, through virtual private networks, and through shell companies in the Cayman Islands and Jersey, does the CFTC have to prove that they were actually doing the work in Chicago or New York, for example?
The burden sort of falls on Binance for allowing US-based entities and customers to trade on the exchange, as opposed to the onus falling on those trading firms. So it's not illegal, from what I've been told, for those firms to be using offshore entities to trade in the US. But if Binance is advising them to do that, then that's what's going to land them in hot water.
What do you think about this kind of enforcement? As CZ has said, it was a surprise to Binance. He says they've been working with the CFTC really closely for the past couple of years. Why now?
Well, there's a lot in there, Matt. I think, first of all, they have been CZ responded, they've been working with this agency for 2 years, but of course the allegations here go back to 2017. So they predate any kind of engagement that Binance is claiming to have made, which is probably a fair recording of what actually happened here. The other thing is that these are a variety of different kinds of allegations, and they're not foot faults. They're really serious stuff here. And the kind of evidence that the CFTC seems to have, text messages presumably pulled off somebody's phone that really talk through coaching people on how to evade known law. This is different from other enforcement actions we've seen from the SEC, for example, which basically is citing failure to come into the regulatory perimeter, right? But here they're actually saying these are really well-established rules and laws around how to conduct anti-terrorist surveillance, and the flaunting of them is a pretty deep and problematic allegation here.
In terms of what could happen, because these are just civil claims and not criminal claims, what do you expect the fallout to be for Binance and for the broader crypto industry?
Yeah, well, I think we should first note that they're not criminal charges yet. We've yet to see action from the DOJ. but some folks in industry have been anticipating that there might be some of that coming down. I saw you had Meltamon earlier, and we've been waiting to see who was going to go first, really, in against this particular exchange. I think the fallout is something, as Melton noted again, it's been expected. We've kind of been waiting for a little while to see which agency, which body in the U.S. government was going to kind of go first here. Turns out it was the CFTC. They got the evidence together first, presumably. It's something that I think people have been back of the mind prepared for, but this is the largest global exchange that exists in this ecosystem. And so I think we're going to have to see how all this plays out. A lot will depend on what Binance chooses to do. Are they going to go to court and fight it? Are they going to settle?
Right.
We have to kind of figure that out and see where it goes.
What you think regulators are trying to accomplish here? Is it about putting a stop to bad behavior, or is it about choking Binance out of the U.S.?
Well, I think it's probably both, but I think in the minds of some of these agencies, those things are somewhat equated, right? They certainly don't see Binance as a good actor based on the allegations in this action. And so I think that they're very interested in ensuring that anybody who is trying to exploit the lack of regulatory clarity realizes that the U.S. is not open to that. Now, the challenge, of course, is a lot of good actors are getting swept up in some of this. There's no question this industry is composed of some bad actors and some good actors, and we're going to have to just hope and cross our fingers that the good actors do not get overly punished. But we're already seeing some of that happening, Kaylee. So the challenge is going to be, does this desire to go after those who are perceived as acting in bad faith sweep out everybody and mean that this entire industry gets offshored out of the U.S., which I think would be the worst possible outcome.
Both against Binance, which is the largest crypto exchange in the world, and its CEO, CZ, for allegedly breaking trading and derivatives rules. The regulator is saying that Binance shirked its obligations by not properly registering with it. We know that the CFTC has been probing Binance over the last several years, really going back to 2021, to see whether it failed to keep U.S. residents from buying and selling crypto derivatives, because remember, Binance and Binance US are intended to operate independently. There has been a lot of question as to whether or not that independence really is there. So the CFTC filing this suit today, but this is just one regulator that has been probing Binance in recent years. It also has come under scrutiny from the IRS related to money laundering rules, from the Securities and Exchange Commission, and from the Department of Justice as well. So this is just yet another regulatory blow to the biggest crypto exchange in the world.
What happens next? How does this unfold? Does it impact the business on a day-to-day basis right now? Clearly, it's going to take a lot of management time to be able to deal with this, Kaylee. Yeah. But is this something that is going to have a meaningful impact in the way that Binance operates on a day-to-day basis?
Well, we're still looking for the response from Binance. In theory, no, much like when Coinbase received its Wells notice yesterday. The company's executives, or last week rather, the company's executives say business is normal for now. Nonetheless, though, it does kind of raise the specter of more regulatory scrutiny after a spate of recent regulatory enforcement actions in the crypto space here in the U.S., and it's dragging heavily on sentiment in the crypto space. You can see it reflected in the price of Bitcoin, which is right around session lows after this news, down about 3% on the day. So yes, businesses will still be operating, just knowing that there is a keen regulatory eye on them. To this point, though, we don't know whether or not this is going to affect any day-to-day operations for Binance, at least outside of here in the United States.
Yeah, we talk about regulation when it comes, and stress testing, for example, when it comes to regional banks, and just sort of highlights how far behind we are in terms of regulation, say, for crypto stuff. And I just wonder what the conversation on the ground is at, and sort of how fast you have to run in places to keep up.
Yeah, well, it's important to note that this action is coming from the CFTC. What we've seen a lot recently is actions from the SEC, which is a lot of just jockeying around who exactly has the jurisdictional control here. So much of the enforcement action as of late from the SEC has been around digital assets not being properly registered as securities. There is a huge question around what the proper definition of a security is and how applicable it is to the digital asset space. That's what you have so many crypto companies, the likes of Ripple, even Coinbase, fighting against. There aren't really clear rules of the road here in the U.S. That is something that is up to Congress in theory, and yet Congress hasn't been able to come together and have a consensus around those rules. That's something we're going to be on the lookout for here in Washington in the coming months.
Do you believe that Binance is following the similar pattern as the fallen FTX empire? Post your thoughts in the comments box below and let us know what you think. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and enable alerts. Thank you for watching.